The doorbell chimed softly. The restaurant buzzed with the clinking of cutlery and the chatter and laughter of customers. The glass door swung open, revealing two young men. Barron Trump stepped inside. Tall, slender, his gaze indifferent yet not distracted. He wore a gray hoodie and dark jeans. His companion whispered something to him, and Barron simply nodded. They approached the reception counter. "A table for two," Barron said, his voice deep and firm. The waiter glanced at him, nodded without a trace of recognition. "Please, follow me." The table was set in a secluded corner. Barron sat down and opened the menu. He glanced over the list of dishes, occasionally looking up to observe the surroundings. The soft yellow lighting could not erase the tension slowly building in the air. "What do you want to order?" his friend asked. Barron put the menu down, pointing at the pasta section. "This one, but without cheese." "I'm allergic." The waiter nodded, jotting down the order. But just as he turned to leave, a raspy voice echoed from the kitchen. "Who orders a dish without cheese? This isn't the kind of place where customers get whatever they want." The sound reverberated throughout the restaurant. Whispers began to ripple among the guests. Barron stared directly toward the voice. The owner, a short, middle-aged man with a flushed face and an apron stained with grease, stepped out from the kitchen. "Was it you?" The man's voice grew louder as he approached their table. "You said no cheese? This dish is our specialty. If you don't want cheese, go somewhere else." The entire restaurant fell silent. Barron did not respond immediately. He simply looked up, his gaze cold yet composed. Internally, irritation stirred, but his lips remained firmly pressed together. "Then I'll order something else," Barron said slowly, his expression unchanged. "Oh, changing your mind now. Typical spoiled rich kid behavior. Thinking you can get whatever you want. Not here." A faint laugh came from a corner of the restaurant. Barron heard it clearly, but did not turn his head. Beside him, his friend began to tense up. "Maybe we should leave?" Barron remained silent. He calmly reached for his glass of water, his eyes never leaving the man. "I merely requested the dish without cheese. If that's such a big issue, I apologize." The words were polite, but his tone carried a sharp edge. The owner sneered. "Apologize? No need. I just don't want to serve people like you." The final word struck like a blow. For a moment, all eyes in the restaurant focused on Barron. A soft click sounded. A guest had started recording the entire scene. Barron glanced briefly at the phone, then looked back at the owner. He gave a faint smile, not one of joy, but of a strange, calm indifference. "Thank you for letting me know," Barron said as he stood up, his voice not loud, but resonating across the silent room. "I won't trouble you any further." The restaurant remained in complete silence. The owner stood frozen. Without looking back even once, Barron turned and walked away. But he knew. This moment had been captured, and the story would not end here. Barron stepped out of the restaurant, the glass door shutting behind him with a dry, sharp click. The night wind blew softly, carrying the chill of New York streets. His friend hurried after him, breathless. "Barron, are you okay?" Barron didn't respond. He stopped and looked up at the gray night sky. His slender fingers tightened around the phone in his hoodie pocket. On the screen, notifications from Twitter, Instagram, and numerous other social media platforms flashed. Familiar headlines appeared repeatedly. Donald Trump's son publicly humiliated at famous New York restaurant. Barron Trump insulted by New York restaurant owner. The Trump family's unexpected silence. The video of him being shouted at had gone viral at an alarming speed. The scene of Barron standing silently, his face expressionless as he faced the restaurant owner's fury, became the center of discussion. "Should we call someone? Tell your father?" his friend asked, voice filled with concern. "No need," Barron replied, eyes fixed on the screen. A newly posted article appeared. If it were Donald Trump, he would have exploded like a bomb. But Barron stayed silent. "What's going on with the Trump family?" He turned off the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. "Let's go home." Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, the owner stood frozen. His phone vibrated nonstop. Negative comments flooded the restaurant's website. "So rude. How can you treat a customer like that? Unbelievable. Even if it's Barron Trump, who treats people this way. Boycott this place." The staff exchanged worried glances. A young waitress whispered, "Boss, do you think we might be in big trouble?" "Shut up," the owner snapped. But his hands trembled as he held his phone. A call from the media manager came through. "You need to make a statement immediately." That video is everywhere. Make a statement? For what? I was just doing my job, the owner shouted back, though doubt was clearly creeping into his voice. The next morning, Trump Tower loomed under the soft glow of the morning sun. In the top-floor office, Donald Trump sat at his large desk. His iPhone lay neatly in front of him, screen flashing with countless notifications about Barron's incident. Melania Trump entered, as composed as ever. "What do you plan to do about this?" she asked calmly. Donald Trump smirked. "I'll teach the world how to handle problems, without making noise." He pressed a button on his phone. "Book a table for me at that restaurant. Tonight." That evening, the media swarmed outside the restaurant. Reporters jostled for position, microphones and cameras aimed directly at the entrance. Rumors that Donald Trump would make an appearance spread like wildfire. Inside, the restaurant owner paced nervously, sweat trickling down his forehead. What if he actually comes? I'm not ready for this." "But didn't you say on the live stream you weren't scared?" a staff member blurted out. "Shut your mouth." At that exact moment, a sleek black Cadillac pulled up outside. The car door opened. Donald Trump stepped out, dressed impeccably in a suit, his face unreadable. Barron followed closely behind, wearing the same calm, indifferent expression. The sound of camera shutters roared like thunder. "Mr. Trump, are you here to confront the restaurant owner? Any comments on your son's public humiliation?" Donald Trump didn't answer. He merely smiled, raising a hand in a casual wave. Barron followed silently, his expression unchanged. Inside the restaurant, the owner stood frozen in place, his mouth opening and closing, unable to form words. The diners stopped eating and talking. Only whispers remained. Donald Trump surveyed the room, smiling at the guests as if this were just another ordinary dinner. He walked to the central table, the best seat in the house, and sat down. "We'd like to order as usual," he said politely, yet his tone carried undeniable authority. "And I would like the owner himself to serve us." The owner stiffened. All eyes in the restaurant bore down on him. "But, I," he stammered. "We're just here for dinner." Barron spoke up, his voice deep and calm, exactly like the night before. "No special requests." A heavy silence fell. The owner had no escape. He quietly nodded and turned away, shoulders slumped. 1 hour later, dinner ended without argument. No shouting, no drama. Donald Trump stood, brushing off his tailored sleeve. He looked directly at the owner, his voice ringing through the hushed room. "The food here is excellent. But what's more important is how a person handles their mistakes. I hope you'll learn that." Barron smiled. A faint smile, yet sharp enough to cut through the tension like a blade. "I don't expect an apology, but I do hope you remember this. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn." The restaurant remained deathly silent. The owner stared at the floor. Donald Trump and Barron left without another word. But outside, the gathered press already knew. The story was only just beginning. The sound of the Cadillac door closing echoed firmly, but outside, the real storm had just begun. In less than an hour after Barron and Donald Trump left the restaurant, the video of the previous night's incident continued to spread at lightning speed. Hashtag Barron Trump, hashtag RestaurantGate, and hashtag Trump family drama quickly climbed to the top of trending lists on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Update: the youngest Trump humiliated in public. Will Donald Trump explode? The moment Barron Trump faced humiliation, silence, or strategy, Donald Trump appears at controversial restaurant. A clever move or a subtle retaliation? On TikTok, hundreds of videos analyzing the incident were uploaded. Some popular influencers even made reaction videos. TikToker at Jesse Talks, 500K followers. "Guys, did you all see how Barron just stood there? I mean, who stays that calm when being shouted at in public? He's definitely a real Trump." YouTube channel at Political Pulse, 1M subscribers. Donald Trump did the unthinkable. Instead of criticizing, he dined at the same restaurant. What does this move mean? Forgiveness or a calculated warning? Let's break it down in this video. Inside the restaurant's office, the owner pulled out a cigarette but didn't light it. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the comments. "Boycott this restaurant now. Terrible service. Never visiting again. How dare he yell at the son of a former U.S. president." With a furious shout, he slammed the phone onto the desk. "Damn it." A timid staff member stepped into the room. "Boss, our restaurant has been flooded with one-star reviews on Google within hours. The media is waiting outside. The owner glanced out the window. Dozens of camera lenses were pointed straight at the restaurant. Sweat beaded on his forehead. At Trump Tower, Donald Trump sat comfortably in his familiar leather chair. On the large screen before him, major news outlets like the New York Times, CNN, and Fox News were all covering the incident. The media expects me to blow up. But this time, I'll give them a lesson, he muttered. Barron sat by the window, his gaze distant. His phone vibrated nonstop, messages from friends, interview requests from TV shows. He didn't respond to any of them. A text from his best friend popped up. Will you speak up? If you stay silent, everyone will think you're weak. Barron stared at the message. Silent? Weak? No. He knew exactly what he was waiting for, the perfect moment. Donald Trump turned to him. Are you ready? We're going to show them. Sometimes, silence is power. Barron nodded. Meanwhile, on social media, a fierce wave of debates erupted. Blogger at Liberty Voice. Barron Trump has truly grown up, handling the situation with astonishing composure. But is it the silence of the weak or a carefully planned tactic? Account at Trump Loyalist. The Trump family has never let anyone humiliate them without a comeback. Just wait. Donald Trump's next move will be masterful. Comments flooded in. Will Barron finally speak publicly after this? If it were Trump, he'd sue immediately. But now, everything's too quiet. I bet Trump is planning a big counterstrike. Mainstream media began speculating. Fox News. Donald Trump remained silent after the incident. Could he be waiting for the perfect moment to make a national television appearance? CNN. Is Trump using this incident to stage a political comeback? A clever move to regain public sympathy. The Washington Post. Silence. The Trump family's new strategy? The peak of the debate came when Donald Trump suddenly tweeted after 24 hours of complete silence. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes it's the loudest voice. Barron and I will return to that restaurant. Not for revenge, but to show the world a lesson in respect. Stay tuned. Twitter exploded. What is he planning? Returning to the same restaurant. Is this going to be the ultimate showdown? The Trump family never fails to shock with their appearances. The media rushed to investigate. The restaurant became surrounded by reporters. The owner panicked as his phone rang endlessly with interview requests. Will you apologize? What are your thoughts on Donald Trump's statement about returning? The owner didn't respond. He knew. The moment of reckoning was near. Outside Trump Tower, Barron stood watching the city lights. He sighed, his hand tightening around his phone. Tomorrow, he whispered. Tomorrow, everything will change. The following afternoon, the sky over New York was overcast, with thick gray clouds signaling an approaching storm. But the real storm was about to erupt on a small street where the now infamous restaurant stood. Outside the restaurant, the crowd had grown massive. Reporters jostled for position, microphones and cameras pointed squarely at the entrance. Passers-by stopped, drawn by curiosity to witness the event that had become a national spectacle. Is Trump really coming? Will there be a direct confrontation? Could there be a speech or a lawsuit? Inside the restaurant, the atmosphere was suffocating. The owner sat behind the counter, staring blankly ahead. The cup of coffee on the table in front of him had long gone cold. The media manager entered, holding a tablet displaying live news streams. Boss, all the major networks are broadcasting live. CNN, Fox News, NBC. They're all focused on this place. If you don't handle this right, the restaurant won't survive the night. The owner clenched his fists. But I wasn't prepared for this. Why would he come back? The manager sighed, staring at him. Because he's Donald Trump. 7 p.m., the defining moment. A sleek black Cadillac Escalade slowly rolled to a stop in front of the restaurant. The crowd erupted. Camera flashes lit up the street like fireworks. The car door opened. Donald Trump stepped out, calm and composed, dressed in a deep blue suit and his signature red tie. Right behind him, Barron Trump emerged. Tall, with an unreadable, composed expression and cold, sharp eyes. He wore a crisp white shirt and a simple yet elegant black coat. For a moment, the crowd fell silent, then burst into chants and shouts. Donald, Barron, will you say something? Will the Trump family forgive? Donald Trump did not respond. He smiled faintly, waving to the crowd before turning to Barron. Let's go, son. The restaurant door swung open. Inside, all activity stopped. Conversations ceased, utensils paused midair. The atmosphere grew thick with tension. The owner stood by the counter, pale and stiff, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. Donald Trump entered, his gaze sweeping over the room with calm detachment. He said nothing as he made his way to the best table at the center of the restaurant, a seat with a clear view of the entire space. Why the center table? What's the meaning behind that? A reporter whispered. As everyone braced for a confrontation, Trump shattered the tension with a smile and a voice that echoed through the room. We're here simply to have dinner, and I would like the owner himself to serve us. A moment of stunned silence. The owner froze, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Trump, I didn't think. Trump raised his hand, cutting him off. There's nothing complicated here. I just want dinner. If you believe your restaurant offers great service, prove it. Right now. His deep, steady voice carried undeniable authority. Every eye in the room followed the owner's trembling movements. Barron sat down quietly, crossing his legs, his cold gaze drifting across the room. You don't have to worry, Barron said, his voice clear enough for all to hear. We're not here to revisit the past. We simply want to see how you treat your guests when the whole world is watching. Dinner began. The owner, hands shaking, brought over the menu himself. He bowed slightly, far lower than usual, and spoke so softly that no one could hear his words. Donald Trump smiled, looking him straight in the eye. I'll have the same dish my son ordered last time, but this time add the cheese. A ripple of light laughter passed through the restaurant. Barron allowed a faint smirk to tug at the corner of his mouth. Is he joking? Or is this his way of making a point? A customer whispered. The owner bowed deeper, unable to respond. He turned away, his back hunched, leaving behind a heavy silence. 30 minutes passed. The dinner proceeded quietly. No arguments. No confrontations. Everything felt strangely normal. Donald Trump occasionally exchanged low-voiced words with Barron, too quiet for anyone to overhear. Barron simply nodded, occasionally glancing at the reporters pressed against the restaurant's windows. They're waiting for something, aren't they? Barron murmured. Always, Trump replied, a sharp glint in his eyes. But we'll give them what they never expected. When the meal ended, Donald Trump rose from his seat. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. The owner approached hesitantly, his face taut with anxiety. Trump didn't look at him at first. He simply walked toward the exit. But just as he reached the door, he stopped. Turning slowly, his voice echoed through the now silent room. The meal was excellent. But the most important thing here tonight was the opportunity for someone to prove they've learned a lesson about respect. I hope you don't miss that opportunity. Silence. The owner stood with his head bowed, unable to speak. Barron passed by him, offering a faint smile, one sharp enough to cut the tension. Respect isn't something to be demanded. It's something to be earned. The restaurant door closed with a firm thud behind the two Trumps. Outside, the crowd of reporters swarmed. But there was no speech, no confrontation, only a lingering sense of mystery, leaving everyone more curious than ever. What just happened? Was this the calm before the storm? What's the true meaning behind their words? The questions hung in the air. But one thing was clear to everyone. This story was far from over. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows of Trump Tower. In the spacious office, Donald Trump sat in his familiar black leather chair. In front of him, a large screen streamed live news reports. International media outlets, CNN, Fox News, BBC, all covered the unexpected dinner from the night before. Donald Trump returns with an unpredictable move. A simple dinner or a deep psychological play? The Trump family revisits the controversial restaurant. Forgiveness or a hidden message? Silence, Donald Trump's most dangerous weapon? Donald Trump smiled, arms folded across his chest. Barron Trump stood by the window, eyes distant, phone in hand still lit up with countless notifications. Father, Barron spoke, his voice calm and steady. They don't understand. You're right, Donald Trump said, swiveling his chair to face his son, a sharp glint in his eyes. But we'll show them. Today, the real storm begins. 9 a.m., Twitter explodes. A single tweet from Donald Trump's account shook the entire internet. There will be no revenge here. Instead, Barron and I have decided to host a charity event at that very restaurant. A place where everyone deserves respect. A lesson, not for one person, but for all. #RespectMatters. The media was stunned. What? A charity event at the scene of the scandal? Is this a clever PR recovery strategy or a masterstroke of image control? Donald Trump turning scandal into opportunity again? Comment sections exploded. But amid the chaos, one thing became clear. The charity event at the restaurant would be the nation's next biggest headline. Inside the restaurant, the owner stared at the live news broadcast, speechless. No way. He stammered. Trump wants to host a charity event here. The media manager burst into the room, looking overwhelmed. We just got an email from Trump's office. They want the event here tomorrow night. All expenses paid. But you have to attend as the co-host. The owner slumped into his chair, sweat forming on his brow. If I refuse, I'll be the villain of the entire nation. But if I accept, he looked into the mirror. The reflection staring back was no longer a proud man, but someone utterly lost. It's a reminder. That evening, the charity event. The scene outside the restaurant looked nothing like the tense night before. A red carpet stretched along the entrance. Bright lights illuminated the building. Hundreds of children from local charities lined up, wide-eyed and excited. International media packed the streets. Above the entrance, a giant banner read, "Respect, a gift for all." Donald Trump appeared, with Barron Trump walking confidently beside him. Both wore sleek black suits, their faces glowing under the lights. The sound of camera shutters roared. Reporters shouted questions, but the atmosphere had shifted, anticipation mixed with admiration. What stunned the crowd even more was the restaurant owner standing beside them. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his expression solemn yet composed. Donald Trump extended a hand toward him. Tonight, we speak of no mistakes, only of change. Thunderous applause erupted. The event began. Barron Trump walked onto a small stage. The spotlight hit him. The room fell completely silent. This would be Barron Trump's first public speech, and everyone knew it. He held the microphone confidently and began. When I was shouted at here, I chose to stay silent. Not because I couldn't respond, but because words only matter when spoken at the right moment. The audience held their breath. My father taught me one thing. To win a battle, sometimes you need to show your opponent they've lost, without lifting a finger. Barron paused, his sharp gaze sweeping across the room. I don't need an apology. Because today's change, that's the biggest apology anyone could offer. The media went wild. Barron Trump's first speech shocks the world. Silence is the strongest weapon. Donald Trump transforms scandal into a PR triumph. Respect, a priceless lesson from the Trump family. The next morning, all the major headlines featured photos from the charity event, plastered with bold titles. How Trump taught the world a lesson, winning with silence and grace. Back at the restaurant, the owner gazed out at a long line of customers eagerly waiting. Sales were skyrocketing. The restaurant had become famous nationwide. But deep down, he knew it wasn't because of the food. It was because of a lesson in respect. As he looked out the window, he saw Barron Trump stepping into the black Cadillac. Barron glanced back once, offering a faint, knowing smile. Inside the car, Barron turned to his father. Do you think they've understood? Donald Trump chuckled, his sharp eyes gazing at the city skyline. They do now, son. Because this time, we didn't have to say a word to win. The story closed with one final message. Silence at the right moment is the loudest voice. Respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned through action. 1 week later, New York had returned to its usual fast-paced rhythm. Yet, the story of Barron Trump and the small restaurant continued to be a topic of conversation. It had become a symbol of intelligent crisis management, a prime example of turning hostility into opportunity. Morning news on CNN. The charity event at a small New York restaurant didn't just save a brand's reputation. It marked Barron Trump's impressive media debut. How did he do it? Through silence and composure. A strategy that left the entire world in awe. At the restaurant, a long line of customers stretched outside. The sign at the entrance had been replaced with a new inscription in bold letters. Respect, the most important ingredient. The restaurant owner stood at the door, smiling at the guests. In his hands was a framed photograph from the night of the charity event, Barron Trump and Donald Trump walking side by side. No one thought this place would recover, not even me, he admitted to a reporter. But then I realized something. Sometimes, you need a shock to learn an important lesson. Respect is never a given. It must be earned and built through sincerity. At Trump Tower, Barron stood before the towering glass window, gazing down at the bustling city below. In his hand was a letter from a school in New York. Barron, you've taught us that silence holds power. Thank you for proving that to the entire world. Barron smiled faintly and placed the letter on the table. At that moment, Donald Trump entered, holding the morning newspaper. Are you ready? He asked. Ready for what? Barron replied, eyes still fixed on the cityscape. Donald Trump sat down, his gaze filled with meaning. Ready for the next chapter. When you step into the world, you'll no longer be your father's shadow. This story was just the beginning. 2 weeks later, Barron Trump's TEDx speech. The venue buzzed with anticipation. Barron Trump stepped onto the stage. The spotlight hit him squarely, and the crowd fell silent. This would be his first major public speech, and the world was watching. I've learned something important. When you stay silent, others will speak for you. But if you choose the right moment to speak, your voice will echo longer than any criticism. The audience leaned in, captivated. Power isn't about shouting louder than everyone else. It's about making people listen, even when you're only whispering. He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. We live in a world where everyone wants to be heard. But sometimes, it's the perfectly timed silence that commands the most attention. The media erupted with praise. Barron Trump, the heir to a leader's composure. From a boy in the shadows to a symbol of calm and media mastery. Barron Trump's story, a lesson in quiet strength. The final scene. Barron Trump stepped out of a building and merged into the crowd of New York. No security detail. No cameras following his every move. He was just himself, unbothered and confident. In that moment, a notification pinged on his phone. A headline flashed. Barron Trump's story inspires millions. The power of silence hits 100 million views. Barron glanced at the screen, a faint smile playing at his lips. He turned the phone off and continued walking into the noisy city streets. But it wasn't the noise around him that mattered. It was the quiet strength within him that the world had finally learned to hear. Share your thoughts or reflections below. Follow us for more inspiring stories. If you believe in the power of silence, hit share to spread this message. Because sometimes, the loudest voice is how you choose not to speak.